Thanks. Yeah, I've got the privilege of doing the last presentation of the day, which is good because I've actually got my notes, so I just don't have to make it up as I go along. I'm not actually presenting any research like the wonderful presentations we've had today. This is more of a kind of, I don't know, discussion piece, I suppose, maybe just get everyone thinking about research and how we do it and how we can include people who are the end users of that research. And the term end users, we don't necessarily think is the be-all and end-all of politically correct terms. Could be service users or disabled people or people with impairments. For today's presentation, I'm going to use disabled people for the first half and end users for the second half, just to confuse you all. But I thought I'd start with a story about a place called the Court Home. And this was created by, around 1948, by an RFA pilot in Hampshire, England. His name was Leonard Cheshire. And I don't know the details specifically, but he brought an ill man into his home and sort of nursed him back to health. And then through a series of events, this sort of became a more popular pastime at his home, and eventually the NHS started referring people with impairments to his home, and so they established a bigger premises, and it became a residence for disabled people, basically. And things progressed into the 50s and the 60s, and there were ups and downs along the way, but perhaps one of the biggest moments was in 1972, when a man named Paul Hunt and his colleagues, they were upset with the amount of control and choice they had over their lives in the home, and they also were upset that they didn't have any say at the management level. So Paul Hunt and his colleagues requested the help of some researchers, Miller and Gwen, to just come and do a bit of study into the home and homes like this, to see if they might gain a greater understanding of what it's like to have a physical impairment and be segregated from mainstream society. And the findings of the research weren't really sympathetic to Paul Hunt and his colleagues. What they basically found in the research was that by the very fact of committing people to institutions of this type, society is defining them as, in effect, socially dead, which I think we can all agree isn't a very positive way of viewing people with impairments or disabled people. And that the essential task to be carried out by the Court Home is to help inmates, that does say inmates, make it the transition from a social death to a physical death. So as you can see, they don't really focus much positivity on the time spent in an institution. The research recommended that the Court Home encourage greater staff training and support so that care, i.e. social death, could be more efficiently managed in the homes. And quite obviously, as could be imagined, this did not encourage Paul Hunt and other disabled residents to welcome the better management of their social debt. So this is quite a big kind of case study, and it's been studied a lot of different ways, but the main reason I wanted to start with that story today is just to use it as an example of an instance when disabled people and non-disabled people can have very different perspectives regarding the nature of experience of disability. And the researchers did say that their research was objective and scientifically valid, and that you can't be told what to find. So you have to agree with them on that point. But Finkelstein argued that Miller and Gwen, who did this research, were just so incredibly clouded by the current view of disability in time, which was that there's something intrinsically dysfunctional within the disabled person and that they are totally dependent on care. So this kind of gave rise... Oh, I've missed some slides. this gave rise to a lot of the subject of research and including disabled people over the last 40 to 50 years, because Paul Hunt, who was in the LaCourte home, then went on to start up an initiative called the Union of Physical Impaired Segregation, or the UPIAS, as it is currently known. And they're famous for making the distinction between disability and impairment, when impairment is something that is structurally wrong with the body, and disability is the political and social barriers that oppress people with physical impairments. And that gave rise to the social model of disability as well, the UPIAS. And one of the research methods most closely aligned with the social model of disability is emancipatory research. And this has also been written a lot about in the literature, and I don't really want to delve into the nuances of this approach too much. Suffice to say that a lot of people saw it as both a method and a methodology of transforming the social oppression that disabled people have by emancipating them in the terms of bringing them into the research process. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'll just focus on four aspects of emancipatory research that Barnes highlighted. One being it has to be accountable to disabled people and their organisations. So actually, if we flick forward, that might be the New Zealand Spinal Trust and things like that. Place the social model at the heart of the research agenda. Number 3, be politically committed to the emancipation of disabled people. And 4, be relevant and produce research that has practical outcomes for disabled people. So I think this is where I move from disabled people to end users now. Hopefully that can be a smooth transition. So why should we even include end users in the research process? Is it an idea that we should even entertain in the first place? Well, I think it is, because it has several key benefits. The first one is that it just empowers people. If anyone listens to your point of view, like really listens, it validates you, and I think we'd all agree with that. The times in our life when we've been listened to, whether it's by the family or partners in our life or a complete stranger or health professionals. The second one is that it can help to ensure that research topics are relevant. If you're talking to people who the research is going to ultimately impact on in the future, if you've got a really bad idea, this might nip it in the bud. However, if you've got a really good idea, this might help to refine it and make it even better. Obviously, it can help with practical implications for data collection. For example, with brain injury, it could be a questionnaire. Are there too many words on the page? Or is the font too hard to read? Does it compete for their attention? With spinal cord injury, is it a good idea to arrange a focus group at 9 AM in the morning? Probably not. So if you chat to people with spinal cord injury first, you might get that information as well. And taken together, I think that can improve the overall integrity of a research project from both the perspective of an end user, but also from the perspective of the researcher, excuse me, and also the funder of the researcher and their agenda. If the research project has more integrity, every stakeholder in the research process will benefit from it. There's also a lot of challenges in the literature about including end users in the research process. One of the main ones is just end users. They might be connected by the attribute of having a spinal cord injury, but that doesn't make them all agree or have the same interests in things. And to use one of the contemporary examples of spinal cord injury, there's a lot of people who think that all research resources should be put into finding a cure. For example, the Catwalk Foundation in New Zealand puts all their focus into that. Whereas other people hold the opinion that maybe we should put some resources into that, but then also some resources into some of the more immediate things, such as employment or adjustment following spinal cord injury. So that's a challenge, to find a line if you've got finite resources to spread. Also, how much do researchers know about end users? And one example I want to draw on comes from a guy called Ben White in America. And they were organising a large focus group on designing a survey for participation levels in the community. And one of the stakeholders in the focus group was a man with, I think it was called multiple sensitivity syndrome. Basically, he was allergic to a huge variety of things that were just everywhere. So they had to pay for several days of driving because this man could not fly in aeroplanes or go to airports. They had to source lots of water that had never been in a plastic container, and they had to extensively clean the hotel rooms and facilities so he wouldn't have any adverse reactions. And Glenn White stresses very strongly that this wasn't a problem, but it did open up the conversation about researchers going beyond what they know and being open to learning things about things that they don't know. The third challenge obviously is communication. Researchers and people who are not au fait with research can speak very different languages. End users might not understand research jargon, whereas researchers might not be able to sort of gather those abstract things that end users think are important and then translate them into measurable constructs. And also how much to include end users. Is it simply enough to consult with them, or do they have to be drawn in as complete partners in the research process, which can have its own problems? So that just gives you a quick overview of the pros and the cons. So the third part of the presentation just looks at what we're doing at Vale to go somewhere to do this, because and these two ways are not silver bullets. They don't solve the problem completely in any way, but they go some way to helping, we think. Firstly, we have an end user consultation committee, and also Vale encouraged end users to gain research degrees and experience. Myself and Carolyn Beaver being examples where Vale has helped us not only through networking but also to give us some financial support to pursue. Carolyn's doing a master's degree, and as Debbie said, I'm doing my PhD. To start with the end user consultation committee, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's a consultation service where researchers in New Zealand who are researching rehabilitation and disability can send us their proposal. We'll present it to a wider reference group of about 25 to 30 members, and we'll gather thoughts and comments, summarise it in a letter and send it back to the researcher. We have 5 committee members on the committee, and some of them have spinal cord impairments, and some of them have brain injury also. And to be honest, it's a bit of a learn as we go procedure. We refine our process as we go, and but we seem to be doing okay at the minute. So what we request from our researchers are 2 things. One of them is a 500-word abstract, and the other one is a 4-slide PowerPoint. And both of these items we ask for it to be divided into background section, the aims, the methods, and the proposed outcomes. We started off by requesting their full proposal, but then when we started receiving 15-page Word documents to present to the reference group, we thought it would be better to just ask for a succinct version. So when we have the reference group meetings, we do follow a template. And we actually ask the researcher to be present because we've found that it's much better to have them answering the questions about their research project rather than us trying to anticipate what they would say, because that's just not a very good way to do it. So when we start the meeting, we talk about these items here, and we ask people whether they think they're relevant, and if they're not, why they're not relevant, and how they could be improved. But quite a lot of the time people are quite happy with what the researchers have done too. So we look at the topic in question, which is the fundamentals of the project, the methods, the dissemination. Quite often we might know places that the researcher hasn't thought about where the research findings could go once they're finished, because quite often when research is done, it might go to a dusty shelf when it could be put to good use in places. And then obviously any areas wanted by the researcher we can look at too. For example, Jason Nichols used our service and he wanted specific areas of the survey questions looked at as well. And then again, any suggestions from the group. So far we've consulted around 6 proposals. I think we've been going for just over a year. And a few things we've learned along the way. We're luckily enough to have positive feedback from both researchers and end users. Because going back to who it benefits, it does benefit the researcher. If you've got a letter from an end user consultation committee saying that your research has been consulted with people with impairments and we think it's okay, that's, to put it frankly, it makes your research look better. But it also, at the same time, lets end users have their say on your research, so it's a two-way street. We found that it's a lot more beneficial to have the researcher present. So we asked the researcher to be physically present, and obviously they might not have the resource to fly to Christchurch for a 1-hour meeting, so plan B is to hold a Skype meeting and they can attend the meeting via Skype. It's a voluntary initiative, so we do our meetings outside of work hours and people have a lot of their work and life commitments too. So sometimes things don't move as fast as we'd like, but we feel that our achievements reflect our capacity as a voluntary initiative. So in summary, there's a variety of ways to include end users. You can have a consultation committee like we do. You could actually sort of facilitate partnerships between disabled people and researchers. And then I'd just like to use the example of Sarah Charlotte Martin's study, where they had someone like Carolyn Beaver, who was actually a researcher in the study. That's another great way of including end users in the research process. She not only gets the research experience and gets her names on publications, but she gets to help the research project as well by, if she's talking or ringing up people who have the same impairment, they might be more inclined to share some of the details of their lives with her. That's pretty much it really. Yeah, thanks for listening. So.